It's wintertime at the Speed Academy tuning dungeon. Most of the project cars are tucked away, ready to hibernate, but that doesn't mean work stops on them. Damn, it's cold in here. However, I'm going to endure the winter-like conditions at the shop here to install the brakes on the S14. Why? Because I love you guys so much, and hey, it's wintertime in Canada, so this is what we got to work with. Anyways, let's get to it. The S14's current stopping setup consists of 300ZX brakes up front and stock S14 brakes in the rear. And here's the upgraded hardware. It consists of Evo 8 front Brembo calipers that'll bolt onto the S14 with these Toge factory brake caliper adapters. They're precision cut and made out of stainless steel for a perfect, durable fit. These DBA Club Spec 5000 series two-piece rotors are also an Evo application, but with the adapters they'll work on the S14. Why did I choose two-piece rotors? Many reasons, but mainly because they're lighter than one-piece rotors, and the DBA 5000 series has a high carbon alloy surface that allows a rotor to handle extreme heat for extended periods of time. For the rears, I've got DBA's 4000 series one-piece rotors. They offer much of the same benefits as the 5000s, just as a single cast unit. I've opted to upgrade to 300ZX brakes in the rear, which means I need almost the entire rear spindle because it's got the parking brake built into it. Check out these 300ZX dual piston calipers. They're going to provide plenty of stopping power out back. Is there a downside? Well, yes, you're going to need a lot of pieces to make sure that this swap is complete, including specific brake lines. So let's get started. First, ditch whatever front brake setup you've got installed. Bolt up the Toge factory adapter brackets to the Evo calipers. Then slide the DBA rotor in place and go ahead and mount the big Brembo caliper on it. I forgot to buy some aftermarket braided stainless lines, so I reused the stock Evo brake lines, and wouldn't you know it, they fit just like stock. Now that wasn't too difficult a job, now was it? You may notice that these Brembos have seen better days. They were on my Evo 8, which was abused at the track a lot, so I'll get around to painting these eventually, but for now they're going to stay the same. The setup looks good right now, so let's move on to the back, where it's going to be a little bit more work. And that's because it's got a drum disc parking brake setup. So make sure when you're doing this job, you have all these little tidbits that go into this. Also, the parking brake itself is from an R33 Skyline. These are hard to come by, but you can find them used or you can buy them new at a Nissan dealership. So very hard to come by. You can't use the 300ZX ones. They're a little bit too short, unfortunately. You'll need to zap off the drive axle nut before starting on anything else. 2 bolts and a parking brake cable hold the rear caliper in place. Once it's off, the rotor can come out, unless of course it's rusted on. Some persuasion with a rubber mallet can remedy the situation quite easily. I chose to remove the entire lower control arm and hub assembly so I wouldn't have to mess with the ball joint. That means disconnecting everything that attaches it to the subframe. After removing the entire hub assembly, you're going to have to actually press the hub out of the knuckle, and that requires a press. You can try to do it with a large hammer and a large socket, but this thing's rusted, so it's the best way to go. And sure enough, it made easy work of it. There we go. Success. Dust shields trap heat, so they're of no good use to me. However, I need the center section for the e-brake assembly, so I trimmed it accordingly. Now's a good time to clean up the rust on the hub assembly and lube it with anti-seize. Then it can all be assembled back together. Before installing the hub assembly back onto the car, you'll want to remove the stock parking brake lines. To get at the cables, the drive shaft has to be dropped. Once you've got them loose, pull them out. It's a tight squeeze under there, so some finesse is required. Here's the reason why the new lines are needed. The stock one is shorter and has a completely different end piece. You'll notice that there are a few extra brackets on the R33 lines, so they'll need to be removed. After sliding the lines in place, crawl back underneath and connect them to the e-brake cable. You may need to lengthen the cable, which can be done inside the cabin through the lever. Once in place, ensure the lines are neatly tucked up and away from the drive shaft, which can be put back into its rightful spot. Now you can reinstall the hub assembly and all the arms that bolt onto it. Finally, grab the parking brake and bolt it into its rightful spot on the backing plate. So here comes the fun part, taking these bits and pieces and putting them onto the hub assembly to complete the e-brake setup. I've done this a million times, so it's easy peasy for me. Actually, I haven't. I checked the internet, I figured it out. It's not that difficult, so why don't we get to it? Start by attaching both brake pads in place. Then, it's just a matter of massaging the rest of the hardware into its rightful spots. And trust me when I say much patience is needed here, because odds are it's going to take a few tries to get it all in place. And watch for those springs. They can go flying before you know it. There it is in its naked glory, the 300ZX parking brake assembly. Now cover it all up with that shiny new DBA rotor and bolt up the caliper. Thankfully, the 300ZX brake line slides right into place, making it a true bolt-on affair. My hands are frozen, my feet are cold, but that wraps up the big brake conversion. However, we're not out of the woods yet. So here's the last business to attend to. It's a brake master cylinder out of a 300ZX. It's much larger in diameter than the factory unit, which is going to give us better brake modulation and feel. However, if you're doing this brake upgrade just for looks rather than performance, it is completely fine to stick with the stock master cylinder. But come on, I know deep down inside, you're going to want to go to the racetrack someday, so in my opinion, you got to install this. Removing the brake master is as straightforward as it comes. 3 brake lines and 2 nuts hold it in place. Remove those and it slides right out. Comparing the stock BMC to the larger Z32 one will quickly show you the challenge we're up against. The brake line orifices are in vastly different locations. Fear not though, we'll make it work. So here's the deal. I've done this brake conversion once before on a 240SX, and after installing the brake master cylinder dry, I filled it up and tried to brake bleed it, and it would not bleed completely. So there was always air left in the system. However, this time around, I've checked the internet, and they say do it this way, which is called bench bleeding the brake master. It's a very simple method that requires connecting brake lines to the BMC and running tubes into the reservoir. You'll add enough brake fluid so that the tubes are completely submerged. The goal here is not to get any air into the system. With a long blunt object, push the valve inside the BMC back and forth. You'll see bubbles coming out of the tubes and continue to do so until they're all cleared up and it's only liquid being pumped back and forth. Since there are 3 brake line orifices, I swapped lines and bled the middle one just to be sure. The The brake master should technically be fully bled now and can be installed. And here's where some of you may cringe, but I assure you, this is a safe practice as long as you're careful. Since the brake lines don't align with the Z32 Master, they're going to need a little massaging to make them fit. Using different types of circular pieces here will help with the tight bends and avoid kinking the line. Before you know it, you'll have the brake lines in place and tightening them up. And here's the most complex wiring job you'll have to do all day. The plugs are incompatible, so the fix is cut one of the plugs off, put some spade connectors on it, plug them in. I told you that was going to be tough. With the brake master cylinder in place, that wraps up the big brake upgrade. However, I'm not going to know how any of this functions until I hit the track, but that won't be till the springtime. I also won't be bleeding the brakes until I have a helping hand, but this car won't be going anywhere anytime soon. So in the meantime, I've got some other projects planned for this thing, so stay tuned and visit speed.academy for all the updates.